Jarad and Brandon here with the Heel to the Face podcast, less than 24 hours after AEW's Revolution for a quick recap. Now, if you don't follow or watch our show, make sure you subscribe for our weekly podcast, including this week, where we will talk more AEW Revolution. So much fun stuff. But last night, Orlando, Florida, the Edition Financial Arena, AEW Revolution, the third event. And I put it out on Twitter, Brandon, you probably saw, and it's hard for me to tell which one of these pay-per-views is their WrestleMania, is their Royal Rumble, because every pay-per-view they put on is the same. It's just great, 4 hours. It's like if you were to book WrestleMania with the WWE talent, this is what you'd want to do, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, from start to finish, I literally couldn't get off the couch because I just wanted to sit there and watch everything. And the nice thing about it was there wasn't like these 5 minute before every match just to preview what the rivalry with the build up and everything. It was literally match. It just was consistent all night. I enjoyed that. It was a fun 4 hours, to be honest with you.
WrestleManias that were typically 4 hours, they've gone a little bit different now. When they were back to 4 hours, they'd be 10, 11, 12 matches long because a lot of matches really short. Here we didn't have any of that pre-build-up, like you said, and still we only had 9 matches on the card, and it lasted 4 hours because every single match got due time. And we'll start off with one thing I want to make note of the kickoff show that I thought was really cool, and that is the House of Black match was the 6-man tag, the final match of the kickoff show. The buy-in show, is that Justin Roberts kind of gave some legitimacy to the length of time. And I kind of talk about like WWE Raw, how sometimes the main event will start at like 10:57 at night. And you're like, what kind of thought is kind of put into this? Yeah. You know, it's only going to last 3 minutes or something like that. So it's kind of like a storyline perspective. And he said the length of the match is to one fall or until the buy-in show comes to an end. Kind of, we all knew the match was going to end before the buy-in show comes to an end, but kind of giving that legitimacy that when we watch Raw and the championship match starts at 10:45, and we go, well, what if it lasts an hour? What if this was real sport? What are you going to do about that? And they know, well, it's not real sport. We'll make sure it's over by 11 o'clock. But kind of giving you that like insider, like, no, like let's pretend this is real sport. Let's pretend that they can go as long as they can. We're going to make sure that it's over before the buy-in, so the match will end before the buy-in. So even though you know it's going to end way before the buy-in, it just gives that more legitimacy. Like if you're watching a UFC fight and they had like a prelim right before the pay-per-view, they'd say this is going to last 3 rounds or until we run out of time.
I think the way AEW does it, like WWE should take more notes because I think it's great because if you do the TV time remaining type of deal or the buy-in time remaining, that sets up, like you said, it kind of gives it's an extra layer to the match. So you're like, okay, either they're gonna finish the match by 8 o'clock, or this match is essentially a draw at that point.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you that it could go that long, and you never know.
It's not like you're not expecting like, oh, it's a 3.5 minute match,
Well, and talk about the main card. Nothing was a 3.5 minute match. Eddie Kingston, Chris Jericho kicked off the show. A very fit Chris Jericho and a very unfit Eddie Kingston. But in the end, Eddie Kingston gets the win in submission. I thought a pretty entertaining match to start, 13 minutes long. What are your quick takes on that match?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Eddie Kingston is never going to be a body guy. I think we understand that. But here's the thing. He's just good at what he does. He's a brawler. He just has a really interesting style. He's like a Kevin Owens from a body perspective. You're not going to see him ever have, this 8-pack. Like he's never going to look like Wardlow. So people just got to get past that part of it. But the match itself, Jericho, Eddie Kingston, I thought it was a lot of fun. It was good to see Eddie Kingston finally get over the hump because, as Jericho alluded to prior to the match, he's never won the big one. He's always come up a little short. And here's the other part. At the end of the match, Jericho doesn't shake his hand and walks out. So does that tell you this storyline still goes? I think it certainly does.
Second match of the night, the 3-way tag team match. Jurassic Express retain their championships. You're going to see a theme when it comes to retaining championships against the Young Bucks and Red Dragon. Probably a good overall match like you'd expect in AEW. These guys going for almost 20 minutes long. A lot of flips. The Young Bucks doing a lot of cool things. I think probably the highlight for me when it comes to this match, there was like a maneuver where I think Jurassic Express was doing like a pile driver on like Red Dragon, and then the Young Bucks like let him do the move and then did like a super kick on them to kind of like, no, you do your finisher and then I'll do my finisher on you kind of thing to kind of get all 3 people like, so there's not like that dead team. It's not like 2 are fighting and one's pretending to be hurt on the outside. I think they did a good job of keeping all 3 pretty active in that match.
I gotta add one little layer to that because you're right. That was a good sequence. Speaking of a nice sequence, there was a cool sequence where Jungle Boy I forgot the first part of the maneuver. You might be able to remember this off of the next part of the maneuver was he like did a flip and then like turned it into a German suplex. I think it was. I'm just trying to remember. It was just so cool. I've never seen that before.
That might have been another similar one. What I'm talking about, but the Jurassic Express retains. I thought maybe the Young Bucks, obviously with the name they've got, but Jurassic Express retains.
Thank goodness, by the way, because I'm not gonna lie, the Young Bucks don't need the championships to be legitimate. It's good to have other tag teams that are holding the belts. I mean, Jurassic Express, I don't think they're already over. Every time they come out with the entrance music, the whole crowd goes nuts. They're very over at this point. So even if they would have lost, they're still going to be very well liked in the AEW universe. So overall, I enjoyed the finish. I'm glad Jurassic Express kept the titles. And like you said, there's a theme coming up here with these title changes, or maybe lack thereof.
It was between this match, I believe, and where we saw Tony Schiavone come out and offer the AEW contract to Isaiah, or formerly of NXT, Isaiah Swerve Scott. Now Shane Scott Ridgeland. But he swerved nonetheless, and he did a little promo there. Obviously, everybody remembers him. He had a little bit of time in AEW near the beginning of AEW and then went over to NXT, and now he's back in AEW. We'll see. Obviously, we talked about the bloated roster and what they can do with him. Hopefully, they've got a lot of space for him, and we'll see where he can go from here. But we move on to the Face of Revolution ladder match, and I think it was your pick. Wardlow beats Keith Lee, Orange Cassidy, Powerhouse Hobbs, Starks, and Christian Cage. To me, I think the highlight of this match was both Wardlow and I think Orange Cassidy. I think Orange Cassidy kind of stole the show. I liked a few things that he did as well. I think Wardlow and Orange Cassidy could have just had this match by themselves. I did enjoy the one part where Keith Lee did come down off the ladder to do a Wardlow Keith Lee kind of stare down like mano a mano, maybe setting up for a future big Haas match between those two in the future. But this match sponsored by Sonic the Hedgehog as they went to get that big brass golden ring. Well, he's your number one contender for the TNT Championship. All while I know a lot of people were kind of joking about the Ring of Honor stars maybe being in attendance, sitting up in the press box like the WCW stars did at WrestleMania 18 right after Shane McMahon bought WCW. We kind of saw that, but instead it wasn't seeing Ring of Honor stars sitting up in the press box. It was Scorpio Sky watching this match very intently. They kept showing him like the whole match long. He's got a TNT Championship match against the TNT champion, Sammy Guevara, this upcoming Wednesday. And then the winner of that will 1 week at St. Patrick's Day Slam face Wardlow. Overall, another good match, 17 minutes long. What you'd expect in a ladder match, power bomb, ladder.
I mean, a lot of people kind of made too much of that final spot where Wardlow dropped Ricky Starks kind of on his head. I just thought it was a higher, it was the way the landing was. It was just a power bomb that went a little bit higher than you think. I mean, Ricky Starks was uninjured, so that's okay. I mean, overall, Wardlow was the star of the match. I mean, Orange Cassidy did get injured in the match as well. I know I think he had a shoulder issue. I don't know what the extent of that is. I mean, there's going to be more details that comes out. But I think what happened was he got hurt on the sequence where Keith Lee launched him out of the ring. I think is where he got the shoulder injury. That's what it appeared to look like from my perspective.
Showing that AEW can go even long on their squash matches, showing exactly how short matches are. The AEW TBS Championship, Jade Cargill, who is the Goldberg of the women's division, or the Goldberg in general of AEW, she moved to 29-0 in AEW with a win and a defending of the TBS Championship against Tay Conti. But like I said, this was essentially a squash match, and it still went 6 minutes and 50 seconds to kind of give Tay Conti a little bit of a chance to beat Jade. But overall, I think this is the shortest match of the night, the only match of the night under 10 minutes. And
it was. I mean, for what it was good. It served a purpose. I mean, it's going to keep Jade Cargill. It's going to keeping her, as like the top female contender or the top female champion in the world, I guess at this point. She's so good right now. I mean, 29-0, that's pretty damn good. And here's the thing. I did like what Tay Conti did. Now, there's a couple of those close finishes just to give the fans a little bit of, oh, my God, did Tay almost get that win? But let's be honest, Jade Cargill is just so much better than everybody else right now. And Tony Khan is just She's I think she's Tony Khan's Goldberg at this point, like you said. I don't think she loses that title for a long time.
He's treating the TBS title like Goldberg treated the U.S. title on route what will obviously be the women's title in the future. I imagine she'll be still undefeated, and I imagine she'll be still TBS champion and undefeated going against whoever the women's champion is eventually down the road when they meet. But about some matches that went a little too long in my eyes. CM Punk beat MJF in the dog collar match. A good match overall. It took about 2 minutes in before CM Punk was covered back in that crimson mask, covered in blood the whole match. Some good promos, I guess, in the sense of the match, during the match, getting on the mic. MJF, CM Punk, exchanging some spars. But for the most part, one thing I took away from this match, other than I think it went a little bit long, I think they could have told the story in a shorter time, is we saw a part of CM Punk that I don't think I've ever seen. And normally when he came here, he came as an equal. He came as like a young guy who's, right there with everybody else. But he kind of reminded me of like Ric Flair at WrestleMania 24, like the old dog, like old Yeller getting put out to pasture. He had that kind of look to him during the match, like, not the savvy, veteran, but like, the Hulk Hogan, or the Undertaker kind of, near the end against Roman Reigns. Remember that whole, WrestleMania 33, that kind of, the old man trying to, does he still have it in him kind of thing. And I never saw that in CM Punk before, but I think I got that out of this match.
Yeah, it was a brutal match. I got to tell you that the highlight of the match for me is MJF finally loses by pinfall. That was, that's a long time coming. And how they got to the pinfall was even more interesting, because that tells you that Wardlow just says, F you, MJF. I'm not working for you anymore. He essentially drops puts the diamond ring on the ring and looks at CM Punk and says, go ahead, do what you got to do with it. So that tells me Wardlow is completely done with MJF from business, working together or working for him. I think you're going to see a Wardlow MJF rivalry here coming up. I think it's going to be interesting, and I think Wardlow is just going to kick the shit out of him. That's how I'm looking at it.
He called out Wardlow to assist him there at the end of this. It was a very bloody match. We thought we were at the end, but then we had a little bit more going on. Finally, MJF called out Wardlow. He runs out to give him the ring, but can't find the ring. CM Punk gets the advantage, and all of a sudden he finds the ring. And then gives it to CM Punk essentially, and CM Punk gets the win. 25 minutes long, and another match. I will say the rest of the matches outside of this one didn't go too long, but the next match that did go too long, I think the women's championship match. Britt Baker wins with help of Rebel and Jamie Hayter. Yeah, I was like reading this, like I know that's wrong, but with help of her posse, essentially she needed help to get the win over Thunder Rosa. So she got the pinfall win. But I think, again, to get to where they were going, they didn't need 17 minutes of a women's match. 17 minutes of a women's match in WWE is your main event, is your WrestleMania main event, is like your women's match. It doesn't have any sort of extracurriculars. This had the extracurriculars. Britt Baker defended the championship with help of outside. You don't need 20 minutes if you're going to get the help of the outside. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I did like about it, I mean, maybe it could have been a couple minutes shorter if you want to nitpick it a little bit, but I like the fact that even with all the distractions, Thunder Rosa still kept fighting and she kept coming. There was a lot of those, those false finishes, and I mean, she kept fighting, and you're like, okay, you're getting to the point where is she finally going to get the 1, 2, 3? Is she going to get pinned? Which she did, and Thunder Rosa's time's coming. I don't know how quickly it's going to be, but obviously we'll dissect that at a later date. But I mean, I think Britt Baker is going to be champion for a decent amount of time, but I think she loses her belt before Jade Cargill loses hers. That's just my thought.
A match everybody was looking forward to, a dream match, if you will, if WWE's terms, definitely a dream match. Could main event this pay-per-view without a doubt, without any championship being on the line. Jon Moxley, Bryan Danielson, they went 21 minutes long. Just like Bryan Danielson said, it would be Jon Moxley who'd be the one that was going to be bleeding, and he was indeed the one who was going to be bleeding. But he did get the victory. This one, not so many extracurriculars outside, not so hardcore, more of a technical match. We're starting to move on late in the show. I think this one started about 10:45, so we're now moving on late into the show. Getting that WrestleMania time slot where you wonder if fans they're still amped, they're still excited, but we're getting on a little bit. But Jon Moxley, Bryan Danielson, a good technical match. Didn't need the dog collar elements that CM Punk and MJF had, essentially. But the end of the match is what everyone's talking about after Jon Moxley gets the victory clean. the debut, and I say meaningful debut of William Regal, because he didn't just come out like Swerve Scott. He came out and kind of added to the story. He didn't just come out and say, I'm in AEW now. But he did something. He came out. He slaps Jon Moxley in the face. He slaps Bryan Danielson in the face, because after the match they had some sort of animosity where they weren't, being cordial to each other, kind of continuing the fight. And he came in there like the ringer, like the coach, like you're expecting him from NXT days.
Yeah.
Slapped both of them like, you're better than this. Knock it off. And he got both of them to knock it off, and I think that was a cool element. That match for sure.
Oh yeah, that was fun. When Regal came out, I think the place popped. From what I saw online too, I went back and looked at some stuff on Twitter later on from live audience members. That crowd popped for Regal. Good for Regal. It's good to see him in AEW. I think the next step is, what are they going to do with him? Are they going to keep him with Jon Moxley and Bryan Danielson? Is he going to be kind of like the part of like the leader of the stable, so to speak? That's what I'm guessing.
They were saying, with a good manager, these guys, even though they beat the hell out of each other, they looked kind of cohesive at the end if they've got the discipline from William Regal, who is William Regal in AEW, no different name or anything like that. He came in as William Regal, and now we're starting to wane on. Now we're getting to a point that it's 11 o'clock. You're like on the East Coast, a 3-hour full pay-per-view, and you're like ready for the main event. But we still had that 6-man tornado tag in there, and didn't go short either. That went 13 minutes and 20 seconds, but a very entertaining match for what they brought out. Darby Allin, Sammy Guevara, and Sting beat Andrade, Matt Hardy, and Isaiah Cassidy. Lots of tables in this one. A match that didn't necessarily have any hardcore elements, except for the fact that everybody was doing something. It wasn't a traditional tag. They were just going at it all together, 6-on-6. Each person had somebody they were fighting at all times, into the crowd, out of the crowd. But overall, a decent match, entertaining. I didn't really understand the vignette they did right before with Sting and Darby Allin driving the car into the bus. I didn't really understand how that added any elements to the match. But either way, I thought the match overall was pretty entertaining.
It was odd. It was an odd placement, because after Mox, the whole Mox, Danielson and Regal segment, you're like, okay, we're ready for the main event, like you're alluding to. And then you're like, wait, we got this six man tag, and I'm like, man, this is really odd. This is really odd of a placement for that match. But overall, I was pleasantly surprised. I wouldn't say it was match of the night by any means, but there were some really great spots. And hell, you put a 60-plus-year-old Sting through 3 tables. That was not expecting that, so that was pretty cool.
I think they did a spot that kind of reminded me of Royal Rumble 2000, where they went like in that little entranceway outside of the ring area, where the entrance, where there's not an entranceway, but entranceway for fans. Where if you remember the Royal Rumble 2000 spot with Jeff Hardy jumping, where they had the taxi cab near the entrance, and they went on the other side of the garden as well and did like a power bomb or a swanton through the tables. And it was in that same little area, and where they set up 3 tables, and then they climbed up through the stands and then jumped off of the edge. But I think the 3 tables probably helps, as you can see. One thing about the world of professional wrestling is the things that look like they hurt the most are actually there to help the most. And the fact that the 3 tables meant that by the time that he got to the floor, he was heavily padded, having gone through only 3 tables instead of 1 table and right to the concrete.
Yeah, so, he was well protected. He was definitely well protected. It was still cool to see. The fans loved it. Again, the audience reaction and the in-crowd audience loved it. It was, and I was at home like, whoa, Sting just did that. He's in his 60s. Good, and it looked good too. It actually looked good on camera. And like you said, the more tables it is, by the time you get to the bottom, your impact's not bad. So I'm not worried about Sting's safety at that point, as long as the spot was executed properly, which to me it looked like they executed it pretty flawlessly.
The main event, Hangman Adam Page and Adam Cole, 25 minutes long for the championship. Adam Page defending the belt. An overall good match, as you'd expect. Red Dragon comes out a little bit, but Hangman Adam Page ends up getting the victory. Again, everybody here defends their championships, which is a little bit of a surprise in such a big pay-per-view. So I imagine come Double or Nothing, some of these guys are going to lose their belts, and ladies as well. But, overall, what you'd expect. I think this one was just on par, because there was no element. It wasn't a ladder match. It wasn't a table match. It wasn't a lights out match or anything like that. Just a good wrestling match between these 2 guys. Adam Page trying to get the buckshot in there, the buckshot variant. And finally, after a few attempts of trying to get it, gets it down, gets the pinfall, and retains the championship.
I will say, though, I like the fact that the Dark Order came out and helped assisted Adam Page because Red Dragon was out there, being a nuisance, so to speak. So it was good to see the Dark Order kind of say, yeah, you guys got to get the hell out of here. So that was good. I did like I like Adam Page using a little bit of Adam Cole's maneuvers to almost finish the match. And, of course, the buckshot lariat to finish it with the 1, 2, 3. It's the right finish right now. You can't take the belt off Adam Page at this point. It's still new. I think he needs to have that belt for a decent amount of time longer.
One last thing we forgot to mention, and I just wanted to bring up quickly, the CM Punk MJF dog collar match that we already talked about. One thing that I forgot to talk about is the entrance that I think was a highlight of the night for sure. So MJF kind of punked the crowd by coming out to CM Punk's music originally and then hitting his music. So everyone thought CM Punk was coming out, to Cult of Personality. But then CM Punk ends up coming out to AFI music and kind of in his attire that he did in his Ring of Honor days instead of Cult of Personality. And I thought that was a really cool thing, obviously tying in with Tony Khan just buying Ring of Honor and kind of, again, showing to what I was talking about kind of in the match, hearkening back to CM Punk being a little bit different CM Punk and a little bit, showing his age, showing he's a little older, and, hearkening back to his Ring of Honor days where it all began. I thought it was a really cool throwback, if you will, that definitely added to that match and added to the night in general.
Yeah, it was a nice touch. Whenever you can get AFI, some old throwback music, on the program, that was cool. At first, I was like, wait a second.
I was like, is this Coheed and Cambria? Because I wasn't sure about what his Ring of Honor music was back in the day. I'm familiar with that music in general, obviously listening to it back in the 2004.
Yeah, me too.
Like, is this Coheed and Cambria? Because I know the Coheed and Cambria guy kind of sounds similar. But then Excalibur says CM Punk is coming out with a fire inside, and then it clicked in my head being like, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
AFI is the music he's playing.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. You can't have Cult's personality twice. You know what I mean? So like, I had a feeling something was going to be up his sleeve. So it was a pleasant surprise that he took us back about 20 years to his old Ring of Honor days. So that was cool. That was a good moment. A good moment among a ton of great moments for this Revolution pay-per-view. It was from start to finish, again, fantastic.
A 4-hour pay-per-view. If you were going to go 4 hours, I would kind of maybe suggest for us on the East Coast, which I imagine all pay-per-views are catered towards the East Coast. So if you're going to cater to the East Coast, maybe start this thing at like 7 o'clock because, WrestleMania did that even when they realized they were going 4 hours long each and every year for WrestleMania. They pulled up WrestleMania to start at 7 o'clock for that sake alone. So wouldn't hurt on a Sunday night to start at 7 o'clock. But overall, a good pay-per-view. And I guess that's what you got to expect. You can't just expect Double or Nothing to be their WrestleMania. You just got to expect every time they pull out a pay-per-view that it's going to be a long, drawn-out, full-fledged, like, Big Four pay-per-view style. They don't have any short pay-per-views. I wonder if the day comes where they have 12 pay-per-views a year, if they'll kind of shorten these things up and kind of have 2.5, 2-hour pay-per-views. But as of right now, they're treating them all like they're WrestleManias. And this one really felt no different. Great matches, everything 20 minutes long. Like you said, nothing in between the matches, no backstage segments, no commercials, none of that. Literally, when a pinfall happened, they went pretty much right to the next match. No outside shots, no backstage shots. Stayed right at the ring for 4 straight hours. We'll talk this and so much more this upcoming week on our podcast. But for this AEW review, he's Brandon, I'm Jarad, and we will talk to you next time.